Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'in lahum bi ihsan ila yawmiddin wa alayna ma'ahum wa fihim bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. To proceed, we are continuing this lesson in the ship of salvation. This is lesson number 32, and we will be covering section 6C of Sheikh Faiz Qurashi's translation, The Ship of Salvation. The author says here in his Arabic, Faslun Shurut al-Wudu'i Ashara. And the Sheikh translates this, there are 10 conditions for ablution, parentheses, wudu. And he has in brackets, and the purificatory bath. So in this section, we will cover these 10 conditions, several of them in the first lesson, and the remainder, inshallah, in what is to follow. So first of all, the author says, Shurut al-Wudu'i Ashara. There are 10 conditions or preconditions for ablution, wudu. So that begs us to review what is a condition. In Arabic, shart, the plural being shurut. And the meaning of a condition, or as it is at times translated in The Reliance of the Traveler and works of Sheikh Nuh Keller, is ما يجب تقدمه على شيء واستمراره فيه. What is obligatory to precede a thing and persist throughout. What must precede a thing and persist throughout. What does that mean? That means that if a condition is not present at the beginning of an act of worship or another action in the sacred law, or if it ceases to exist throughout that action, the action is invalid, meaning that it does not count. So conditions are extremely important because they are an obligation, just like the obligatory integrals. In any work that we're going to learn, whether that be in purification, prayer, zakat, or fasting, we have to get the conditions and the obligatory integrals for that action to be valid, meaning for it not to have to be made up, for it to count and be valid in the Sharia, in the sacred law. So again, a condition is ma yajibu taqaddumuhu ala shay wa istimraru fi, what must precede a thing and persist throughout. What must precede a thing and persist throughout. Another definition they give, it's somewhat beyond our scope, it's kind of more of a usuli or mantaqi definition. It is ma yalzamu min adamihi al-adam wa la yalzamu min wujudihi wujudun wa la adamun li dhatihi. That which its absence necessitates absence, meaning the absence of a condition necessitates the absence of the work, meaning the invalidity of the work. The existence of a condition for itself, in and of itself, does not necessitate validity or invalidity, because another condition might not be present. Point is, if we don't get these conditions, the work is invalid. If we want to learn how to perform valid works, we have to learn how to get the conditions, the integrals, avoid the things that invalidate that work. And all of that is before the beautiful sunnahs of the work, the deep intentions of the work, the acceptance that we hope from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of these works. So conditions are really important. They are super important. They are 10. We're going to add another, and in some of the more lengthy works, they will add additional conditions. We'll just add 1 or 2 to these 10. The first 2 conditions are conditions for every act of worship, whether that is purification, salah, what have you. And you also notice there are some exceptions for these. The third is a condition for every act of worship that requires purity. And again, there is an exception in that case. So the first condition is what? Al-Islam, meaning that the person performing ablution must be Muslim for the ablution to be valid. So if a non-Muslim washes as we do, that is not a valid ablution wudu in the Sharia of al-Islam. So what does that mean? It didn't lift ritual impurity. That would mean that if they performed ablution or a ghusl and then went and took the shahada and wanted to pray, they would have to repeat that act of purification because it is not valid prior to their Islam. And everything that that has an intention, Islam is a condition of it, right? So that's a condition of intention itself, as is discrimination. There is an exception here. The exception here is if a man is married to a woman from the people of the book, and she does an obligatory ghusl in order to be lawful for them to have marital intimacy. That work is obligatory for him. It's labud, it's a must in that case. However, that is an exception to this rule. And that ghusl that she performed would not be valid for worship or other works. Were she to embrace Islam, she would have to repeat that ghusl for her acts of worship, her acts of ibadah to be valid. So that is the first condition, al-Islam. Wudu is not valid nor any act of worship prior to someone embracing Islam. Second condition, discernment. Sometimes you will see this translated as discrimination, for example, a child be discriminating. So discernment in Arabic is tamyiz. They give various tests or criteria of tamyiz. The best of the positions of the fuqaha is that a person can eat, drink, and do istinja properly alone, right? And yakul, yashrab, wa yastanjiya wahdahu. They make an exception to this condition as well. And the exception to this is you can carry an infant or a child that is bigger than an infant but not discerning through Hajj. And a Hajj can be performed for that child or with that child. And in that case, the wali of the child or the person taking them through the works makes intention for them and washes them for ablution, and that is an exception. So that an exception to that is the wudu that is performed upon a child that has not reached discernment in order for them to perform tawaf on a Hajj. And again, these first two are conditions for every act of worship that has an intention, right? And anything with an intention. The third condition is that the person performing wudu and ghusl, ablution and ghusl, be free from menstruation and postnatal bleeding. So those are states which cause major ritual impurity. They must be free from those states in order for wudu to be valid and permissible, and also for them to perform a valid ghusl. Also, other states of impurity, like if someone is constantly urinating, they could not obviously perform wudu along that. Things that are constantly breaking their purity, you cannot perform wudu during those states. Though someone who is in a state of chronic nullification of ablution, they are a unique case, and we will deal with them in their proper place. An exception to this as well, this third condition has an exception. The ghusls of Hajj and Eid, and the two Eids, a woman who is menstruating or in postnatal bleeding may perform those. That is an exception. And notice these first three conditions, there are exceptions for each of them. That is very common in fiqh. It's very, very common for there to be a general ruling, and there are exceptions in those cases. The fourth, to be free from that which prevents water reaching the skin. And what does that mean? The exterior of the person that is being washed in wudu or ghusl. So any of the four areas that are washed for wudu or the whole body, in the case of ghusl, it has to be free from that which blocks water from reaching that area. So those are things like dirt under the fingernails. Though there is a dispensation there, the toughest position, the azima, the strictest position is anything under the fingernails prevents wudu's validity. And a somewhat easier position, and there are 3 positions on this, 3 awjuh positions of the ashab. Another position is that if it is from the body's origin, like if someone scratched their skin and they had skin under their fingernails, that would be acceptable, and dirt that was not of the species of one's body would not be acceptable. A third position is that it doesn't harm. The stricter position, those that are easily able should apply that, but we can be somewhat gentle to others, especially people that do a lot of manual labor. They're going to need some dispensation there. Or people that are outdoorsmen, for example, certain extenuating circumstances with the fingernails, there is some room. Another example and a common problem is someone that works with any kind of paints or glues. If you have that on one of the areas of ablution, for example, or any area that is done in ghusl, that is covered in ghusl, that has to be removed if you're able, without causing like bodily harm. If a type of dirt on your body becomes like a piece of your body, that is exempted, but otherwise it has to be removed. So like if someone works as a painter, if someone works in an industry where they use glues, or some sort of craft or arts where they use glues, when you get that on your skin, you got to remove it. Another example, and this should go without saying, nail polish prevents water from reaching the area of the nails that are obliged to be washed in wuzu and ghusl. I am aware that there are those who take the position, and when I say those, I don't mean scholars or jurists. I just mean people say that what's called breathable or permeable nail polish is acceptable. It is not acceptable. We'll see the last condition we're going to add from the commentary Nail al-Raja is that water must run over the whole portion that is being washed. And something being permeable and water slowly seeping through it is not acceptable in this case. That doesn't count as water running over that place. And Allah knows best. So nail polish is going to have to be removed. You work with glues or paints, it has to be removed. You have dirt on your body, it has to be removed. Another point they mention here, what about moisturizers? What if someone put a bit, like, for example, body oil or baby oil, some sort of moisturizing oil, or olive oil, we could say, on their skin, and then they make ablution and they notice the water beads up on their skin. Is that acceptable? A moisturizer that is a liquid is acceptable even if it causes the water to bead. A moisturizer that is a solid, like a wax or a thick paste that retains its shape when you scoop some of it out, that is not acceptable. That is considered a barrier. So if you apply something like a waxy chapstick to your lips or some other place on your body that is washed in ablution, you should use a little soap or something to remove that, dissolve that and remove it prior to ablution. The fourth condition is that there be nothing on the limb which results in a change of the water. So there can be nothing on the limb that changes the water. This change is the change that stops it from being pure and purifying. It is no longer plain water. It is no longer ma mutlaq. It has been changed. And this is considered an extreme change that changes the name. So for example, rather than calling it water, you now call it tea, right? If you put tea leaves in water and it changes so much it's tea, it's no longer called water. If you had something like that on your body, for example, ink or something, that changed the water so much that we could no longer just call it water, and you were certain of that change, that water is not valid for ablution. Ablution with water like that is changed, even if the change occurs from something on your limbs, is not valid. And that is our fifth condition and final condition for this portion of the lesson. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.